The fluorescent lights of Riverside Pharmacy hummed low over the empty aisles, casting a pale wash across rows of cough syrup and vitamins as the clock crept past midnight. Maya Ellison stood behind the counter in her pale blue scrubs, stethoscope looped around her neck out of habit rather than necessity, since she had only stopped by after her hospital shift to pick up her own prescription before the overnight pharmacist locked up. She was tired in the particular way that came from 12 hours on a cardiac floor, her feet aching inside her sneakers, her mind already halfway home to her apartment, and the leftover pasta waiting in her fridge. She had not expected to still be standing there when the bell above the door chimed, and an elderly woman shuffled in, clutching a small paper bag of medication and a worn brown wallet. The old woman was small, bird-boned, with silver hair pulled back into a simple knot, and she wore a cardigan the color of oatmeal over a floral blouse. Her eyes moved anxiously between the pharmacist at the register and the numbers glowing on the card machine, and when she spoke, her English came out broken and uncertain, the words catching on each other like she was translating from another language in real time. Maya recognized the cadence immediately. Korean, she guessed, though she couldn't be certain, only that the woman's frustration was universal enough to need no translation at all. I am sorry, the old woman kept saying, fumbling bills out of her wallet, counting them twice, her hands trembling slightly. Not enough. I thought enough. The night pharmacist, a heavy-set man named Daryl who had clearly been hoping for a quiet close to his shift, glanced at the register display and then back at her with a mixture of pity and impatience. It's $28 short, ma'am. I can hold the medicine for you if you want to come back tomorrow with the rest, but I can't give it to you tonight without payment. The woman's face crumpled with a kind of quiet devastation that Maya had seen too many times in hospital hallways, the look of someone who had already been let down by too many systems to be surprised, only tired. She pressed her lips together and began gathering the loose bills back into her wallet, murmuring apologies to no one in particular, already turning to leave the small paper bag of pills behind on the counter as if she had decided this was simply how tonight would go. Maya didn't think about it. She stepped forward before her exhaustion could talk her out of it and pulled her own card from her back pocket. I've got it, she said, sliding her card toward Daryl. Ring it up together with mine. The old woman turned, startled, her hand rising as if to protest, though the words that came out were halting. No, you don't have to. I don't know you. It's okay, Maya said gently, offering a small smile she hoped read as reassurance rather than pity, because she understood that pity was its own kind of insult. Least I can do. It's late, and everybody needs their medicine. The old woman searched Maya's face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this kindness came with hidden strings, and finding none, she finally allowed her shoulders to loosen. Thank you, she said, bowing her head slightly, an old-world gesture that seemed to surprise even Daryl behind the register. Thank you so much. What is your name? Maya, she said. Maya Ellison. Maya, the old woman repeated carefully, testing the shape of it.
Jag är grannmoder han. Ansonia.
You are very kind, Maya. Maya laughed softly, waving off the compliment. It's really not a big deal. Do you need a ride home? It's pretty late to be walking around by yourself. Grandmother Han hesitated, glancing toward the dark parking lot beyond the glass doors, and it was only then that Maya noticed the young man standing near the entrance, half in shadow, half lit by the sodium glow of the streetlights outside. He was tall, dressed in a black suit with the top button of his white shirt undone, his hands resting in his pockets in a posture that seemed deliberately relaxed but carried an undercurrent of tension, like a coiled spring dressed up as calm. His eyes were fixed on the old woman with an intensity that bordered on alarm. That is my grandson, Grandmother Han said, following Maya's gaze. He worries too much. I only wanted to walk to get my medicine myself. I do not like to always be driven everywhere like an invalid. The young man pushed through the door then, the bell chiming again, and crossed the small pharmacy floor in a few long strides. Up close, Maya could see he was younger than she'd first assumed, maybe early 30s, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that studied the room with a quick, assessing sweep before settling on his grandmother. Halmoni, he said, his voice low, edged with something between relief and reprimand. I told you to wait for me outside. You cannot just walk off like that at night. I am not so old that I cannot buy my own medicine, Jae-won, Grandmother Han said, switching easily into a tone that suggested this was a long-running argument between them. Besides, I made a new friend.
This is Maya.
She paid for my medicine when I did not have enough. Jae-won turned to Maya properly for the first time, and something in his expression shifted, the guarded assessment softening into genuine attention. You paid for her medicine? It was only $28, Maya said, feeling suddenly self-conscious under his gaze, aware of how tired she must look after her shift, her hair frizzing slightly at the temples, dark circles she hadn't bothered to conceal beneath her eyes. It wasn't a big thing. It was a big thing to her, Jae-won said quietly, and something about the way he said it made Maya believe he understood exactly how much $28 could mean to someone counting bills with shaking hands at midnight, even if he himself was dressed like he'd stepped out of a magazine advertisement for wealth. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a money clip thick with bills, peeling off several and holding them toward Maya. Let me repay you properly. Maya held up both hands, stepping back. No, absolutely not. I didn't do it expecting to get paid back. Please, put that away. Take it, Jae-won said, an edge of insistence in his voice now, as though refusal was a foreign concept to him, as though the world generally moved according to whatever he decided it should. I said no, Maya repeated, more firmly this time, meeting his eyes without flinching, even though something about his presence made her pulse tick up in a way she didn't fully understand yet. I'm not a charity case, and neither is your grandmother. I helped because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted a reward. For a moment, Jae-won simply stared at her, and Grandmother Han let out a small, delighted laugh, patting his arm. You see? She has spirit. Not everyone tells you no, Jae-won. He lowered the money slowly, tucking it back into his jacket, though his eyes never left Maya's face, studying her now with a different kind of attention, something more curious than commanding. Fine, he said. Then at least let us drive you home. It is late, and this parking lot is not particularly safe. Maya hesitated, glancing toward the dark windows, the empty street beyond. She had her own car, a battered gray sedan with a dent in the back bumper from a fender bender 2 winters ago, parked just outside, but there was something in Grandmother Han's hopeful expression that made her reluctant to simply walk away. I have my own car, but thank you, she said. I should really be getting home. Long shift tomorrow. You are a nurse? Grandmother Han asked, gesturing to the scrubs and stethoscope.
Yeah.
Cardiac unit at Mercy General. A good profession, Grandmother Han said approvingly. Kind hands and a kind heart. Rare combination these days. She reached out and, before Maya could react, took her hand in both of hers, patting it warmly. Thank you again, Maya. I will not forget this. It was nothing, really, Maya said, though she found herself smiling despite her exhaustion, something about the old woman's warmth chipping gently at the walls she usually kept up with strangers. Jae-won watched the exchange with an unreadable expression, and then, almost reluctantly, he extended a hand toward Maya. Kim Jae-won, he said simply, by way of introduction. Thank you for looking after my grandmother when I was not there too. Maya shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the faint calluses that didn't quite match the expensive tailoring of his suit. Maya Ellison. Take care of her. She seems like she deserves it. She does, Jae-won said, glancing at his grandmother with an expression that briefly softened into something almost boyish, an affection that seemed at odds with the coiled tension Maya had noticed in him earlier. More than she lets me. They said their goodbyes in the parking lot, Grandmother Han waving from the passenger seat of a black car that gleamed even under the sparse streetlights, and Maya drove home turning the strange little encounter over in her mind, wondering distantly who exactly this Kim Jae-won was, with his money clip and his sharp-eyed watchfulness, and the 2 men who had been waiting silently by the black car the entire time, neither of them saying a word, both of them scanning the parking lot the way security did in movies about people far more important than pharmacists and off-duty nurses. She decided, somewhere around the second red light, that it didn't matter. She had done a kind thing for a woman who needed it, and that was the end of it. She had no way of knowing that the end of it was, in fact, only the beginning. 3 days later, Maya was finishing a double shift when her supervisor told her someone was waiting for her in the lobby. She assumed it was her sister, who occasionally swung by with coffee after long shifts, but when she stepped out of the elevator, it was Grandmother Han sitting primly in one of the waiting room chairs, a small gift bag resting on her lap, looking entirely out of place among the tired families and coughing patients around her.
Grandmoder Han.
Maya said, hurrying over. Is everything okay? Are you sick? No, I am fine, Grandmother Han said, standing with surprising energy for a woman her age, holding out the gift bag. I wanted to bring you something. To thank you properly. Inside the bag was a beautifully wrapped box of Korean pastries and a small jade bracelet, delicate and clearly not cheap, the kind of thing that made Maya's stomach twist with discomfort. Grandmother Han, this is too much, Maya said, trying to hand it back. I told your grandson I don't need repayment. This is not repayment, Grandmother Han said firmly, waving off the attempt. This is a gift from me to you, because you were kind to a stranger with no benefit to yourself. There is a difference. You will hurt my feelings if you refuse. Maya, sensing there was no winning this argument, relented, tucking the bracelet gently back into the bag. Thank you. Really? That's very sweet of you. You must come to dinner, Grandmother Han said suddenly, as though the idea had struck her fully formed. This Sunday. I am making japchae and bulgogi. Jaewon's chef tries, but it is never the same as when I cook. Oh, I couldn't impose. You will not be imposing. You will be a guest. Grandmother Han's tone left little room for argument, and Maya found herself, against her better judgment, agreeing to a Sunday dinner she had a distinct feeling she should have declined. She learned more about Kim Jae-won over the following weeks than she had ever intended to. It started innocently enough, dinner at the sprawling house on the hill that Grandmother Han called home, where Maya sat at a long table set with more dishes than she could count, listening to Grandmother Han talk about her late husband and her garden and her complicated relationship with her grandson's chosen profession, which she referred to only obliquely as his business, her lips pressing into a thin line whenever the topic arose. It was the housekeeper, a soft-spoken woman named Grace who had worked for the family for over a decade, who eventually told Maya the truth, gently, over tea one afternoon while Grandmother Han napped and Jaewon was away at what Grace called meetings. Jaewon ran an organization, Grace explained carefully, one that operated in the shadows of legitimate business, an empire built on things Maya suspected she didn't want detailed for her, the kind of thing that came with bodyguards and cash-filled money clips and a grandmother who worried every time he left the house. He's not a bad man, Grace said quickly, seeing the way Maya's expression shifted. Whatever you might hear, whatever you might think. He inherited a position he never wanted from a father who left him no choice. He protects people. He takes care of the family, the community around him. It is complicated, this life he leads. Maya wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, the idea that she had somehow stumbled into the orbit of a mafia boss simply by paying for an old woman's blood pressure medication, but there was no laughter in her when she thought about it seriously, only a slow, uneasy realization that the world she had briefly touched was far larger and more dangerous than the one she usually inhabited. She should have walked away then. She told herself this repeatedly in the weeks that followed, even as she found reasons to keep visiting Grandmother Han, even as Jaewon began appearing more frequently during those visits, standing in doorways with his tie loosened, watching her with an intensity that made something warm and unwelcome bloom in her chest. You should stop looking at me like that, Maya told him one evening, when they found themselves alone on the back terrace while Grandmother Han supervised the kitchen staff inside. Like what? Jaewon asked, though the corner of his mouth twitched, betraying that he knew exactly what she meant. Like I'm a puzzle you're trying to solve. Maybe you are, he said, leaning against a railing, the city lights spread out below them like scattered embers. A nurse who gives away money to strangers and refuses money from men who could buy her 100 pharmacies. That is not a common combination, Maya. I'm not that complicated, she said, though her heart was beating a little too fast for the casualness she was attempting. I just believe in doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. Even when it puts you in danger? His voice had shifted, lost its teasing edge, gone serious in a way that made her look at him properly. What do you mean? Jaewon was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight, and when he finally spoke, his words came slow and deliberate, as if he'd been debating whether to say them at all. There are people who do not like that my grandmother has grown fond of you. People who watch this family closely, looking for weaknesses, for things they can use against me. A nurse with no connections to this world. Someone I clearly care for. Someone with no protection of her own. That is exactly the kind of weakness they look for. Maya felt a chill move through her despite the warm evening air. Are you saying I'm in danger because of you? I am saying you should be careful, Jaewon said, his eyes dark with something that looked almost like regret. I did not intend for any of this to happen. I did not intend to care about a stranger who paid for my grandmother's medicine. But I do, and that complicates things for both of us. The warning proved prophetic sooner than either of them expected. It began with small things Maya barely registered at first, a car that seemed to idle too long outside her apartment building, a stranger who asked too many questions about her schedule at a coffee shop she frequented, a feeling of being watched that she initially dismissed as paranoia born from spending too much time around Jaewon's world. It escalated on a Thursday evening when she left the hospital after a particularly grueling shift to find her car's tires slashed. All four of them. A note tucked under the windshield wiper written in blocky, deliberate handwriting that read simply, "Stay away from the Kims, or next time it will not be your tires." She called Jaewon with shaking hands, and he arrived within 20 minutes, his expression thunderous as he examined the note, his men fanning out to search the parking garage for cameras, for any trace of who had left it. "This is my fault," he said, his voice tight with restrained fury. "I should have kept my distance from you the moment I realized how I felt. I have brought danger into your life that you did not ask for." "Don't," Maya said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her own voice, even as her hands trembled at her sides. "Don't you dare take responsibility for someone else's threats. Whoever did this made their own choice. That's on them, not you. You do not understand what these people are capable of," Jaewon said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she had never seen from him before, the composed exterior cracking to reveal something rawer beneath. "This is a rival organization, the Choi family. They have wanted to move against me for years, and they will use anything, anyone, to weaken my position. I cannot let them use you." "So, what, you're going to lock me away somewhere safe and pretend none of this happened?" Maya crossed her arms, her chin lifting in a way that Jaewon had come to recognize as the precursor to an argument she had no intention of losing. "I'm not going anywhere, Jaewon. I'm not going to disappear just because some coward slashed my tires and left a note. I've spent my whole career walking into rooms where people are scared, where things are dangerous, where I don't have full control. I don't run from that. I'm not going to run from this either." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes, admiration warring with fear for her safety. "You are either the bravest person I have ever met, or the most stubborn. Can it be both?" Maya asked, a small smile finally breaking through her tension. "With you, I suspect it usually is," Jaewon said, and for the first time since she had met him, he reached out and gently touched her face, his thumb brushing along her cheekbone with a tenderness that seemed to surprise even himself. The days that followed were tense, filled with additional security measures that Maya reluctantly accepted, a car that followed her to and from her shifts at a discreet distance, a new deadbolt installed on her apartment door by two of Jaewon's quietest, most efficient men. Grandmother Han, when she learned what had happened, was furious in a way that Maya found almost comforting, muttering in rapid Korean about the Choi family and their cowardice, insisting that Maya move into the house on the hill until the matter was resolved, an offer Maya politely but firmly declined, unwilling to let fear reshape her entire life even as the threat loomed larger with each passing day. The confrontation, when it finally came, arrived not through subtlety but through brazen aggression, on a night when Maya had stayed late at the hospital to help stabilize a patient who had coded twice during her shift, emerging into the parking garage well past 2 in the morning, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. She noticed the black sedan immediately, parked at an angle that blocked her usual path to her car, 3 men stepping out as she approached, their postures unmistakably threatening even before one of them spoke. Maya Ellison, the lead man said, his accent thick, his smile cold. Kim Jae-won's little charity case. We have a message for him, and you're going to help us deliver it. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, every instinct screaming at her to run, but the garage was empty at this hour, the exits farther than she could safely reach before they closed the distance between them. She thought, absurdly, of every emergency protocol she had ever learned, every de-escalation technique from hospital security training, searching desperately for anything that might apply to a situation so far outside her normal experience. I don't know what you think I can do for you, she said, forcing steadiness into her voice even as her pulse raced, taking a slow step backward toward the stairwell door, calculating distances, exits, anything that might buy her time. I'm just a nurse. I don't have anything to do with whatever business you have with him. You are exactly what we need, the man said, taking a step closer, and Maya realized with a cold jolt of clarity that he intended to grab her, that this was not a conversation meant to end in words. She did the only thing she could think of, throwing the heavy medical bag she carried directly at his face, using the half-second of confusion it bought her to sprint for the stairwell, her sneakers slapping hard against the concrete, adrenaline overriding 12 hours of exhaustion as she yanked the door open and threw herself through it, slamming it shut behind her and jamming the fire extinguisher mounted nearby beneath the handle in a desperate, improvised barricade. She heard them cursing on the other side, heard the door rattle against the extinguisher's resistance, and she didn't wait to see if it would hold, taking the stairs 2 at a time, fumbling her phone from her pocket as she ran, dialing J1 with hands that shook so badly she nearly dropped it twice. Maya? His voice was sharp with immediate alarm, some instinct in him already recognizing danger from the sound of her breathing alone. Parking garage, she gasped, bursting through the door onto the hospital's ground floor lobby, security guards turning at the sound of her frantic entrance. 3 men, they tried to grab me. I'm in the lobby now, security is here, but J1, they said it was a message for you. I am coming, he said, his voice hard as steel now, all warmth gone, replaced by something lethal and focused. Do not leave the lobby. Do not go anywhere alone. I will be there in 10 minutes. He arrived in 7, storming through the hospital doors with an urgency that drew stares from every nurse and orderly in the vicinity, his usual composure completely abandoned as he crossed the lobby in long strides and pulled Maya into his arms without hesitation, holding her so tightly she could feel his heart hammering against her cheek. I am so sorry, he said into her hair, his voice rough with an emotion she had never heard from him before. I should have insisted on protection tonight. I should have never let you walk to your car alone. I'm okay, Maya said, though her voice wavered, the adrenaline finally beginning to ebb, leaving her shaking in its wake. I got away.
I'm okay.
This ends tonight, J1 said, pulling back to look at her, his eyes blazing with a cold fury that made Maya briefly glimpse the man capable of leading an organization as dangerous as his. The Choi family has made a mistake they will regret. They came after someone under my protection. That is a line that cannot be crossed without consequence. J1, Maya said carefully, placing a hand against his chest, feeling the tension coiled beneath his shirt. Don't do anything that makes this worse. Don't become the kind of man they're trying to force you to be. He looked at her for a long moment, something in his expression softening despite the fury still simmering beneath the surface. You continue to surprise me, he said quietly. Most people in your position would demand blood. You ask for restraint. I'm asking you to be smart, Maya said. Whatever needs to happen to keep people safe, to stop this from happening again, I trust you to know how to do that. I just don't want you to lose yourself in the process. What happened over the following 2 weeks unfolded largely outside Maya's direct knowledge, though she gathered fragments from Grandmother Han's careful phrasing and the tension that radiated from every member of J1's household staff. There were meetings held late into the night, phone calls conducted in low, urgent Korean that Maya couldn't follow, a period where Jaewon seemed to age years in the space of days, dark circles forming beneath his eyes as he negotiated whatever needed negotiating to ensure the Choi family understood the cost of what they had attempted. Maya, for her part, refused to simply wait passively on the sidelines. She continued working her shifts, continued visiting Grandmother Han, continued living her life with a stubborn defiance that both terrified and impressed everyone around her, though she did accept the security detail now without complaint, recognizing the difference between foolish bravado and reasonable caution. It was during this tense period that she found herself, quite unexpectedly, becoming an asset rather than simply a target, when Grandmother Han fell ill with what initially seemed like a minor cold but rapidly worsened into something more concerning, her fever spiking dangerously in the middle of the night, while Jaewon was away at yet another tense negotiation. Maya arrived within 20 minutes of Grace's frantic call, moving through the house with the calm efficiency of someone who had spent years managing medical emergencies, checking Grandmother Han's vitals, recognizing immediately that this was not a simple cold, but something requiring urgent hospital care, likely pneumonia given the crackling sound in her lungs and the alarming color of her lips. "We need to get her to the hospital now," Maya said firmly, already coordinating with Grace to get Grandmother Han into a car, refusing to wait for an ambulance that might take precious minutes they couldn't spare. "I'll ride with her. I know exactly what needs to happen when we get there." The following hours blurred into a haze of hospital corridors and urgent conversations with colleagues Maya had worked alongside for years, calling in favors, ensuring Grandmother Han received immediate attention, staying by her bedside through the night monitoring her oxygen levels with the practiced eye of someone who had done this 100 times before, refusing to leave even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. When Jaewon finally arrived, having rushed straight from his meeting the moment he received the news, he found Maya asleep in the chair beside his grandmother's bed, her hand still resting protectively over Grandmother Han's, dark circles beneath her eyes testament to the sleepless vigil she had maintained. She would not leave, Grandmother Han said weakly from the bed, awake despite her illness, watching her grandson's face as he took in the scene before him. Even when the doctors told her to rest, she stayed. "She saved my life tonight, Jaewon. Do not ever let this one go." Jaewon crossed the room slowly, kneeling beside Maya's chair, gently brushing a strand of hair from her sleeping face, something fierce and tender warring in his expression as he watched her sleep, exhausted from caring for a woman who was not even her own family, who had no obligation to her beyond a kindness that had somehow blossomed into something neither of them had expected or fully understood until this moment. Maya woke slowly to find him watching her, and for a moment neither of them spoke, the quiet hospital room holding a stillness that felt significant, weighted with everything that had happened between them since that midnight encounter at the pharmacy weeks ago. "You saved her," Jaewon said finally, his voice thick with emotion he made no effort to hide. "Again. You keep saving the people I love, Maya, without asking anything in return." "That's just who I am," Maya said softly, sitting up straighter, glancing toward Grandmother Han's now stable vitals on the monitor. "I told you, I don't do it for reward." "I know," Jaewon said. "That is exactly why I cannot let you walk away from this. From me, no matter how dangerous my world makes things. I have spent weeks trying to convince myself that the right thing to do is to push you away, to protect you by removing myself from your life. But I cannot do it. I do not want to do it." Maya's breath caught, her heart doing something complicated and warm in her chest as she looked at him, this man who had entered her life through the strangest of circumstances and somehow become someone she genuinely cared for despite every warning bell that should have told her to run. "Then don't," she said simply. "Don't push me away. I've made my choice already, Jaewon. I made it the moment I decided to keep coming back to that house on the hill, even after I knew exactly what kind of danger it might bring. I'm not scared of your world. I'm scared of losing something that finally feels real." The resolution with the Choi family, when it finally came, was not the violent reckoning Maya had feared but something more calculated, a demonstration of power and control that ended with an uneasy truce brokered through channels Maya never fully understood, though she gathered that Jaewon's restraint, the very qualities she had begged him to maintain, had ultimately proven more effective than brute force, earning him respect from rivals who had expected only aggression in return for aggression. The men who had confronted Maya in the parking garage were dealt with in ways she chose not to inquire about too deeply, satisfied only that the threat against her had been permanently neutralized, that she could once again walk to her car after a late shift without fear shadowing every step. Grandmother Han recovered fully within 2 weeks, her illness leaving no lasting damage beyond a newfound insistence that Maya visit even more frequently than before, and it was at one of these visits, months after that first midnight encounter at the pharmacy, that Jae-won finally asked Maya the question that had been building between them since the night he found her asleep at his grandmother's bedside. "Marry me," he said simply, no elaborate proposal, no dramatic staging, just the two of them standing on the same terrace where he had first warned her of the dangers his world might bring, the city lights spread beneath them as they had been that first tense evening. "I know this is not how these things are usually done. I know I am asking you to accept a life that comes with complications most people would run from. But I love you, Maya Ellison, and I do not want to spend another day pretending that I could ever let you go." Maya looked at him for a long moment, thinking of everything that had brought them to this point, the $28 that had started it all, the fear and the danger and the strange, unexpected tenderness that had grown between them despite every obstacle placed in their path. "I'm not the kind of woman who fits neatly into your world," she said slowly. "I'm going to keep working double shifts and giving away money to strangers and telling you no when I think you're wrong. That's not going to change, even if I say yes." "I would not want it to change," Jae-won said, taking her hands in his. "That is exactly the woman I am asking to marry me." "Then yes," Maya said, a smile breaking across her face despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you, Kim Jae-won." Grandmother Han, watching from the doorway with tears of her own streaming freely down her face, clapped her hands together in delight, already calling for Grace to bring out the good tea, already planning a wedding that would somehow need to accommodate both the strange, dangerous world Jae-won inhabited and the fierce, ordinary kindness that Maya had brought into all of their lives without ever intending to change anything at all. The pharmacy where it had all begun remained a quiet, unremarkable place, its fluorescent lights still humming over rows of cough syrup and vitamins, but Maya passed by it often in the years that followed, always with a small, private smile, remembering the night she had simply refused to let a stranger walk away empty-handed, never imagining that such a small act of kindness would lead her into a love story stranger and more dangerous and ultimately more beautiful than anything she could have written for herself. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of unexpected love, hidden danger, and the quiet power of kindness in a world that desperately needs more of it. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next story.